You can see that the two charts each give quite a different picture of the performance of boys and girls in the two key subjects of math and English. It shows that in English, girls consistently outperform boys over a period of 6 years, achieving scores about 10% above their male peers. There is quite a different picture when we look at the math results with no real difference between genders in the results. What is the explanation for these key differences? To answer this question, researchers look at biological and cognitive factors, and a range of social factors. The interaction between these different components in early childhood development are seen as maintained and reinforced in the school context. And this leads to distinct gender patterns of behavior and skills with direct consequences for school performance and achievement. The ultimate uses of this evidence are to show that biological factors, such as patterns of cognitive developments, are closely linked to social factor, such as learned gender categories. These cognitive skills are learned both preschool and subsequently at school, supported by the responses of teachers, creating a reinforcement of patterns. At the top, you would have a king. Now the king would rule over a kingdom. Now, this is not so easy to govern, especially during the Middle Ages. And the king might owe many people, things, especially people who helped the king come to power, helped him depose the previous king or to conquer this land. And so in exchange for that and to help govern, he might grant land or feasts to other people. And the key currency in the Middle Ages under the feudal system, island. And land in exchange for loyalty and service. So this whole thing is a kingdom. Now right over here, this is a duchy. And a duchy will be controlled by a duke. I guess I didn't call it duchy because that just doesn't sound as serious. So the king might grant a duchy to a duke, and in exchange, the duke would provide loyalty pledged their fealty. If the kingdom is threatened, the duke will fight alongside. The king would provide their own. When Australians engage in debate about educational quality or equity, they often seem to accept that a country cannot achieve both at the same time. Curriculum reforms intended to improve equity often fail to do so because they increase breadth or differentiation in offerings in a way that increases differences in quality. Further, these differences in quality often reflect differences in students' social backgrounds because the new offerings are typically taken up by relatively disadvantaged students who are not served well them. Evidence from New South Wales will be used to illustrate this point. The need to improve the quality of education is well accepted across OECD and other countries as they seek to strengthen their human capital to underpin their modern, knowledge economies. Improved equity is also important for this purpose, since the demand for high-level skills is widespread and the opportunities for the low-skilled are diminishing. Improved equity in education is also important for social cohesion. There are countries in which the education system seems primarily to reproduce existing social arrangements, conferring privilege where it already exists and denying it where it does not. Even in countries where the diagnosis might be less extreme, the capacity of schooling to build social cohesion is often diminished by the way in which schools separate individuals and groups.
In relation to the connection between people experiencing intersecting inequalities and experiencing homelessness and housing precarity, the background and the rationale for researching this topic provided in the introduction demonstrates that there is a correlation between women and BAME communities and the private rented accommodation, low-paying occupations, dependency on financial governmental support and high levels of invulnerability to homelessness and housing insecurity. The research presented in this dissertation highlighted that negative trends associated with the insecurity of the UK's housing landscape, such as declining levels of homeownership, dependency of a large proportion of low-income households on the UC system and the significant levels of residency in social and privately rented accommodation, is experienced disproportionately by women and BAME community members, in comparison to the majority population. When addressing how homelessness and housing insecurity have been politically and theoretically viewed in the past and in the current climate, the literature reviewed highlighted that in the past, there was a tendency to believe that homelessness was a result of poor life choices of dysfunctional or deviant individuals, and this stigmatization is still present in the UK society. Self-awareness programs can help enhance students' behavior in class according to several empirical findings. It is also important to consider that those students who are more mindful may be more focused and produce less distractions. Class teachers have noted that there are lesser incidences of student indiscipline and increased compliance in the class. It would be due to the enhanced self-observation and control that mindfulness practices provide. Students will be able to control their impulses as well as the way they relate with people and objects when they become more aware of their thoughts and feelings. This is good since it reduces time taken in disciplining students, hence the teacher is more on teaching and the students more on learning. It should be noted that mindfulness interventions have been useful in academic achievement. Through its practice, mindfulness assists students in attention, memory, and executive functions since the practice is constant. Most of these cognitive enhancements are crucial in academic activities because they influence attention, intake of information, and reasoning of the learner. For instance, the exercises that demand the students focus on a given activity for an extended period help in developing the strength to pay attention to tasks for long. With this improved focus, the students have the ability to excel in class practices and exams. In addition, the improvement of memory and its retrieval through the use of mindfulness practice assists students in retaining information and it improve on their performance.